So guys, the 2024 announcement has now been made and we didn't get what we wanted, unfortunately. The Spark X has been dangled, well I don't know if it's been dangled, and this is where after you kind of feel silly. So I've spoken to lots of dealers at this point, lots of people have been saying, Joe, it's just not going to happen. So I kind of got myself to blame to get my hopes up on it. But ultimately that 1630 engine never materialised. We didn't see it in the Seadoo Spark. We did see a lot of changes, which I'll talk through with you today. Some quite big staple changes, I would say, if you're quite familiar with the Spark. But in terms of the engine, spoiler alert, this video is not going to include any updates to do with that engine.
That remain unmistakably Spark. Eye-popping colors have been a Spark staple since day one. The classic exoskeleton.
So first of all, guys, is obviously it looks different, which we anticipated, right? It's 10 years anniversary since 2014. Things were going to change, obviously. Completely redesigned the top deck, which I anticipated they would do. Can't tell if it looks wider or bigger, the footprint. It looks similar to me, but the product styling is just completely different. For me, it just looks very, very bubblified now, which I guess is to try and please that more mass market. Skis are inevitably going to go electric, we would say, in the near future. So I think this tees them up quite well for that transition. If you look at a lot of product styling with electric products like your Teslas of the world, they're way more simplistic in the way the actual product styling is done versus your more aggressive, sporty styling. So if you think about the original Spark, so obviously the first gen Spark now, the Mark 1 if you like, it's got all those angular lines which I've always thought made it look super aggressive. It looks like almost like a fighter jet plane. A lot of that's been lost. I mean, if you look at all of the bumper trims, we're not seeing as many split lines now, a lot more flowing lines. I think what this design has that the original one doesn't have is definitely those nicer flowing swoops. So if you look at the front area around the storage bin, everything sort of intersect nicer. So as a result, you get that more seamless look. Whereas because there were so many split lines on the original design, the Mark 1, it does ultimately break up the design quite a lot. Now obviously that was intentional, and they've obviously intentionally moved away from that product styling, but yeah, it definitely looks different. Yeah, so the ergo lock, which we see on the bigger high performance skis, it definitely looks as if it's locking you in more. She's not got her knees positioned forward, so maybe I'm reading that wrong. So we're seeing a big thing here is this upgrade in terms of your Linkq system and obviously your music system. Speaker system, redesigned BRP audio portable speaker system. So the product styling of that looks a little bit more so basic, as Anna Delvey would say. I think they're trying to make, again, it a little bit more mass market, not so specific to the PWC, but their first speaker design was quite nice. Now, if you think about the original Mark 1, you'd have to drill holes for those optional extras. So with the Linkq system, you'd have to obviously drill into your rear deck to be able to fit the actual adapters, whereas now they're there as default, a bit like what you see on the high performance, obviously, skis. Some new rib design on the actual footwells. GoPro mounting. I mean, GoPro mounts are good anyway, but obviously that's a nice little touch. I'm just waiting for this engine. New display. So yeah, that looks as if it's trickled down from like the likes of the GTI, but obviously more information is better. That's obviously a great upgrade. Okay, yeah, that's a nice detail. So obviously, for a long time, everyone's grumbled about the fact you can't get a phone into the actual storage compartment on the Spark and it's not watertight. They've actually now got that exact same style as the large performance crafts. So the trim buttons have been changed from just your simple up and down to a full dial system there. The riding position looks slightly different from what I can see. I can't tell, why are people not pushing their knees in more to those? To me, that looks more like padded Spark Tricks Evolution. So yeah, everywhere I look, that particularly those red sections that come down through the front, they've lost all those nice little chamfers and details and it looks super smooth. I think they're trying to reduce all of that one-up freestyle seat. Okay, so it looks to me as if they've made the seat wider. I mean, yeah, you can turn the current Spark that aggressively. Yeah, it definitely looks as if that seat's been wider. Still got your free ups, guys, so if you like your free ups, it's obviously still gonna have that. Towel stands as always. But yeah, that seat's definitely wider, and I think they've introduced some of that rear, a little bit like this chair to be honest, some of that rear like padding to give you that locked in feeling, which you see on the likes of the GTI and alike. So we've got additional stitching now on the actual seating as opposed to the current Spark design, which can sometimes be a bad thing to be fair, because more stitching means more prone to little rips and tears. So I do like that white and red, that looks really nice, and also the lime green. Megs would love that purple. It looks like a purple to me, lilac. Come on, talk to us about the engine, Seadoo. Are we gonna get the 1630? So it looks more flattened out to me initially. No, that's nice. The red in that RXP is beautiful. As you guys know, I'm not a huge musclecraft fan, but seeing a red for the first time in a long time, and it's not just that normal sort of red, that's an XPDI red, really powerful. That's a really nice looking ski. So yeah, the engine, as you can see, is more like a box and higher, whereas the whole, obviously it's the whole assembly that we're seeing there, looks lower and more elongated. It might just be the way that I'm looking at that, but as I suspected, they're pushing that 1630 to its extremities for the high performance personal watercrafts, which was an inevitability. People have been crying out for ages for more horsepower out of that ski. So it makes sense that they've done that. Whether in years to come that engine's put under too much pressure and you have early life failure, we'll obviously see in due course. Luckily, I'm not going to have to worry about that because I'm obviously not a crazy musclecraft guy. But it's that engine that I want to, that does look very nice. That red looks very, very nice. I think we've officially moved on now, guys. Okay, right, that is this section of the video to do with the Spark. So I'm going to hit pause there. I may make another video talking about the other skis, but let's delve into the detail about this Spark. So the first and obvious bit, there's no 1630, 130 or 170 engine that we've seen, the likes of the GTI and obviously the big boy 300, RXP and RXTX. It hasn't materialized. It was always a pipeline dream, but yeah, we're not seeing that in the Spark Hole yet. Whether it was intended and they've ran out of time with the R&D, what you got to think when a design pivots that much, because although a lot of people will probably come out and say, oh, it's just small little subtle details, that top deck, in my opinion, has been completely redesigned. So all the panels look different, which is negative in the sense if you're an old gen Spark user, you're not going to be able to interchangeably change parts. It looks like a completely redesigned top deck. So for me, that would suggest maybe they were posturing to put that more flattened out engine. Now again, I'm being very, very naive with saying flattened out, because in reality there's still a lot of stuff going on there. You've got all of the intake, the fuel tank, everything, all the peripheral components of that engine, which still would make it probably hard to get into that hole. But if they have widened the seat of the Spark, and there's theoretically more room there, we could see it in years to come. The only thing with that is obviously it will be 11 years, it won't be the 10 years, which, you know, weird things do happen. They might just literally announce it mid-year. They've obviously done that with the old X4 95 XP, where they announced it right at the end of 95 to get it into the race series. I do think if we're going to see this engine now, it's going to be a diluted down version. For me, I think they're prioritizing still, as they always have, the high performance crafts. And us guys on the peripheral love the two strokes. Getting that 130 brake in this small, playful, lightweight, playful hole is always going to be something that I don't think Seadoo are going to prioritize, because it would, a lot of people online say it would then make like the likes of the GTI redundant, because you'd have essentially the same better performance in a lighter hull. So that's the first thing to note. We haven't seen that 1630, so everything that we saw online, they lied to us, guys. The next little bits, and I'll flick through them quickly, which are more user experience things, which I do think will improve the Spark platform. That watertight storage for your phone, that's a game changer. A couple of my buddies who I ride with who have modern day skis, the one thing that I love about theirs is they have that real good watertight storage. We've got the little phone pad that you can slide your phone into, and you have that peace of mind that it's there. That coupled with obviously the speaker system, which they've now improved on the Spark. Whether the product styling of the speaker itself is as nice as the first gen. It sounds as if I like everything from the first gen, and that can sometimes happen in the sense that anytime you're familiar with seeing a current one design, it's like with the iPhone, you become au fait with the product styling, so that when there's like a change, me and Megs have got a Range Rover Evoque, absolutely love it, but initially at least, we always wanted the first gen, because I love the angleness, that's not even a word, the angles of that design. It was much more aggressive. The Gen 2 came around, and like a year of looking at it, I saw actually they've refined that design really, really well. It took a lot of that sort of, they brought a lot of simplicity into the design, and that aided like the premium feel of the product. So I do think that's what the product stylers have been doing, like the product design team of Seadoo. They're trying to make that design like an evolution, if you like. So where you had split lines and over stylizing, they're trying to reduce some of that out. But yeah, with the BRP system, we now have the actual ability to clip in by just removing a panel on the actual front. So you just remove that piece of plastic. You're not drilling, you're not doing anything permanent to the ski, which is what I never really liked about the current Spark, that if you want to do these modifications, you can do them. There are the long-term sort of screw holes in your actual Polytex. Then we've got the Linkq System. I've never liked drilling into the rear deck of the free up platform. So the fact that we now have those and they pop up in the exact same fashion as the bigger skis, that's obviously a pretty big game changer for the Spark rear platform. They look as if they're integrated really nicely. They've changed the rear deck to like a ribbed design. Me personally, I like that big Seadoo embossed on the actual real platform. That I always really liked. It was one of the reasons why I like the 3-up more than the 2-up, because you had the platform on the 3-up, you had that big embossed logo on the back. Now they spoke about improved rear boarding. Whether that, like, what you have to be careful with some of these launches is they use words and say things like, for example, they've said like a whole new way to do tricks and things like that. In reality, there are going to be a lot of similarities, so you do have to cut through a lot of that potentially sort of just marketing spin stuff. Then we've obviously got this new IBR system. Now it definitely looks different from a product styling. The bucket, you can see from all the photos and literature, looks completely different. So whether that does anything to the actual characteristics, they say that there's a new Spark tricks mode now. And I did see online some of the comments that they've said there's a new eco mode. So maybe the actual way you can get the wheelie going on the new Spark is easier to hold. I like the fact there's a skill level at the moment, even still with the obviously the wheeling of the current Spark. So if they've made it more compliant, that's not always a good thing, because as we saw with like the evolution of 2 strokes through to the bigger 4 strokes, the skis got more compliant. A lot of that user experience and like rider input got lost along the way. So we never want to see the Spark become a ski which is super easy to ride. Obviously it is easy to ride inherently, but to really wheelie for an extended period of time and really jump and flip that ski around. So it'd be interesting to see what they've actually done. Put in the comments below what they've done with that actual bucket. People are maybe there in the lantern, they've seen it closer. Looks as if there's almost 2 channels that are flowing through the top of the actual bucket. So that's quite interesting to see. There's talks about the fact that it's got a bigger front storage bin. Can't see anything online whether it talks about the fact it's now watertight. I don't think it will be, because it will always still be that optional extra that sort of pushes in, retrofits in. And then obviously we've got that new handlebar design. So we're now seeing the full system, if you like, entertainment system with the 4 buttons versus the 2 trim settings. Again, I don't think that's a negative. Adding more functionality into the handlebar is not going to be a bad thing. And likewise with that screen there, having more information presented to you. These are all things which, unless you're being really nitpicky, they're great steps forward. I do still think that the product styling of the Mark 1 Spark, where it all sort of flows between your legs, it looks like a motocross bike, and then obviously the storage box and all of the screen all feels super integrated. Always really love that. All flows for me really well. This new design looks as if they've taken a bigger brother screen and they popped that in there. So whether that front fascia feels like almost like an old-fashioned car radio, where you'd have the fascia panel which would sit over the top to obviously accommodate the bigger screen. Looks good, doesn't look bad at all, but it's obviously all got slightly wider. Now if it's got wider to get a bigger engine in there in years to come, happy days. If it's got wider just for the sake of getting wider to make the seat comfier, that's not what the Spark was ever about. And one of the biggest things that I noticed when watching this video is they talk about like improved riding position in this ergolock and all. They didn't actually say ergolock, that's just me piggybacking onto what I've heard in previous promo videos. We typically want improved rider characteristics when you get a performance increase. So if you've got more power out of the Spark and you'd want to ride it faster, corner it sharper, do more aggressive riding with it, you'd want a more improved riding position. So I'm really keen to know whether it's a comfier riding position or an improved position to get more performance out of the ski, and whether this new IBR actually gives you better performance. But for me, I was just thinking, you've got potentially like an improved riding position, but you don't have improved performance. Which is the last thing I want to close on, guys. So there are, across the board, is a complete top deck redesign. There are some really nice product cues in it. I would arguably still say I like the old fighter jet styling, but that could just be because it's fresh and new. I've not looked at it for enough. The colors are definitely stunning. In the coming days, the coming weeks, we will see more and more literature, information, videos, everything on that ski. And then we'll be able to really tell side by side if it's a nice step forward or if it has become too, I can't believe I'm saying this, toy-like, too bubblified. If it has, then ultimately we're still not far removed from the previous gen, so you're still going to be able to pick up previous gens. So it's not as if because Seadoo have brought out this new gen that all the old ones are completely redundant. The only thing it does mean is if you do like the fancy new watertight storage compartment, the Linkq system, you are going to have to be on the new platform, because it's like with an iPhone. When they do a software update, certain models do drop off. So the last thing to touch on is just that engine. Are we going to get it in future years to come? I personally feel Seadoo now, there's one or two things going on. Number one, they've either missed their deadline with R&D, they didn't have enough time to get that new 1630 motor in there, they were posturing for it, they literally just ran out of time, and their design team actually thought there's quite a lot of improvements here to probably get it over the line at Atlanta and put out what we have. Or number two, they've had that step change product design, you know, everything's become softer, more, I'd say like more mass market, more Tesla-fied, if we say, and they're just getting ready for the electric evolution. They've used that word quite a lot, evolution. So whether that's like the next generation, I think now that they've made those improvements to the Spark, it has all of like the creature comforts, if you like, that the bigger skis have. So it's probably here to stay for a good number of years. Whether they can get 10 years out of this one, reminds me of Grand Theft Auto. Anyone who's a fan of Grand Theft Auto, the actual PlayStation game, Xbox game, sorry, not sure what side you're on. The life cycle of that is huge. Whether there's enough in that new Spark to please the more die-hard two-stroke fans like me, I'm not 100% sure, and I struggle with the fact that at the moment I've been reading all the comments, Seadoo talk about the fact that there is a whole evolution. An evolution for me always means stepping forward in the right direction, and whilst undoubtedly they have with a number of things, you've got a ski in the XP and the GSX with the 951 in it, 30 years removed now, that can do 60 miles an hour stock with that 130 engine. Yes, we can get into the semantic differences with performance in terms of reliability and all that sort of stuff, but if you put all that aside and just focus on rider experience in terms of performance, you really shouldn't have a 30-year-old ski that can outperform, in my opinion, not the wheelies and all that sort of stuff. That's a separate detail, a Spark-specific tricks detail. But I'm talking about you're on a lake, you're in a straight line, you have a GSX next to you. A Seadoo Spark 30 years on should have that level of performance out of the box. You shouldn't have to modify, you shouldn't have to do lots of stuff. And for me, the Spark at the moment is a 50 mile an hour ski stock, which is just slightly, it's not quite fast enough. If it had a little bit more performance, I'm talking literally 10 miles an hour, everyone always says, oh, you just need to jump on to a GTI. It's not what I'm saying, guys. The Spark would be the perfect ski with 10 miles an hour more, and it would be the perfect lightweight, playful, fun ski. Throw back to the 90s, do a lot of what the 90s ski's done, be more fuel efficient, all of those wonderful things, which obviously we have to acknowledge about the new gen. And you would no longer be in a situation where you still reach for the GSX or the XP. I still would always reach for those, I've got to be honest. But it would become a more compelling argument because they would be comparable on all playing fields. And I really don't see why we're still talking about a 900 Ace 10 years on. Pretty much everything hardware-wise gets upgraded, not just on the product styling, ergonomic point of view, but you know, think about what's inside of an iPhone, or a lot of products, they always get an evolution underneath the hood as well, and they didn't speak out anything under the hood. That was massively disappointing. Guys, I hope you like this style of video. This is going to be a new series, which will probably be called something like Let's Talk or Discussion Time. It will naturally trickle through to my website, which is normally nearly live now. So give it a subscribe, give it a like, hit the subscribe button as always, and I think safely I can say at this point, I would say this anyway, so don't panic, any two-stroke fans. Let's keep the classics alive, because two-strokes for me and their performance is still as compelling as ever. Get out on the water for £1,500 on one of these old skis, look after it, it will look after you. You'll get every ounce of smile. That being said, I do want to have a go on the new Spark, so I will be checking it out. I will give you some more honest thoughts on my social. Guys, give me a follow over there because I do share a lot of stuff on there. Thank you for watching, and like I say, as always, let's keep the classics alive.